So this is a typical Georgian terrace in Montpellier. There's dozens and dozens of houses like these, dozens and dozens up and down the street. Typical features are it's got solid walls, which are complex to insulate, but make a huge difference if you can achieve it. Most of these have had their boilers replaced by now, and a good quality boiler just cuts the amount of heat of gas you have to consume from the very beginning to achieve any kind of effect. It's got two roof sections, roof areas, two lofts. It's got double roofs, so it's getting into both of those lofts and topping up the loft insulation also makes a huge difference, and that's something most people can do very easily for themselves. Insulating the floor is a bit more complicated, but if you can see from this house, they've got a basement underneath, which gives them good access to be able to insulate their floor.
We've made the basic, cheap DIY improvements that we can make to the house, such as magnetic secondary glazing to the very drafty sash windows, which previously were quite problematic because it was difficult to sit near the sash windows because of the drafts that come through the sash windows. Even if you use the insulation fairy strips, they're not as effective, but the magnetic double secondary glazing has been very effective, so that's been quite successful. We've also put some extra insulation in the attic, as is to the depth recommended, and we have done other simple things such as stuff insulation up the chimneys of the fires that aren't in use, and put a layer of loft insulation type fabric under the floor in our underneath our lounge in our open basement type area, to reduce the loss of heat to the basement, which is not a converted basement, it's just a storage area.
We're down in the basement of the house, underneath the suspended floor area of the house. This area is a very typical wooden floorboard, but what they've been able to do here, because they've got the headroom, is insulate it. This is above here are the joists holding up the floorboards above, and what they've done is they've filled in the entire space with this mineral wool type insulation. And if you poke it, I've got a pokey thing here. It's about, if I can find a place to poke it up, it's about 150 mil thick. They've gone to the full width of the rafter. Now I can't find the space. I found it earlier because I measured it. Yeah, it goes to about there. So about 150 mil thick in this case, and then they boarded underneath it to help hold the material in place. But this kind of job could be, if you're feeling energetic, could be banged out in a day, a couple of days. And it makes a reasonable difference. On average, 10% of heat loss is through the floors. So I haven't done the calculation for this house yet, I've just gathered the measurements. But in this case, this represents about 3/4 of their ground floor area. And they've reduced the heat loss through it substantially. So because it's an easy thing for them to do, I'm really glad that they've done it. We're in the client's living room, and this is their window. It's a very typical, thousands and thousands of these all over Bristol, wooden sash window. But what this client has done is put secondary glazing on it. If you look, it's a very good seal. It's very airtight in this case, because they've got the system they've used has magnetic strips all the way around the sides, and there's a magnetic strip on the plastic sheet, and there's a magnetic strip all the way around the frame. So what the client can do is take it off in summer and store it in a shed somewhere. So what it does is it makes a still air gap between the sash window and the room, so less heat is lost through the room. The advantage of the client having done it this way for them is that it's easy for them to install and remove. They can control the heating of their own house and make it cooler in summer themselves, and it's a cheap and easy way for them to have done it. That said, there are better ways of doing double glazing or indeed secondary glazing. We're on the first floor of the flat, and this is one of the external walls of the house, and these are quite large heat loss areas. You lose a fair amount of heat through the walls, and the solution in this case is to insulate either the interior or the exterior walls. A great time or a great opportunity to do external wall insulation would be if you're doing other exterior work to the house, roofing, doing something to the windows, it becomes cheaper to do the excavator work at that kind of moment. And what you do is apply exterior wall insulation, which comes in boards of various thicknesses, to the wall, and you probably want to do something like render over it, or maybe you get hold of a specialist system which includes a finished surface already. And what you achieve if you do external wall insulation is you have two things. You have an unbroken envelope all the way around the house, all the way around the brickwork of the house. You don't have to stop for the floor junctions and the wall junctions. But the main advantage is that you turn the bricks of your house into a heat store. They heat up for the heat in your house passes into the bricks, most of it, some of it, and radiates back into the room when you're not necessarily running your heating system. So your house becomes a storage heater for you.
Quite often I've got my husband to climb around in the attic because I don't really like going into enclosed spaces, so that was very easy for me, and he didn't find it too much of a problem. He got a bit grubby up there, but it only takes a couple of hours to do that. Cutting the secondary glazing plastic to size was quite easy because if you order it from certain websites, they cut it for you, and you just have to apply the magnetic strips and the metal strips to the window frames. So if you measure things correctly, it's very easy. If you measure them wrong, then it doesn't quite fit.